We're due to start at 4 o'clock UK time, 11 o'clock EST, and we're 2 minutes late already. We're just waiting for quite a few other people to join us. So we're going to delay our start about another minute. So thank you very much for your patience, and this webinar will start in about 1 minute or 1.5 minutes time. Thank you. Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. We were due to start 4 minutes ago. We're just waiting for a few people to join us, so we're going to get started very shortly, just in the next 30 seconds. Thank you very much for your patience, and we will get started very soon.
This is Nathan. Can you hear me?
Hi, Nathan. That's brilliant. So let's get going. We can hear you loud and clear. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. My name's Mark Powell, and myself and Katie Carter, my colleague, are both here to support you technically. If you have any problems technically, just communicate with us via your chat pane, which is in your control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So if you can't see your control panel, look on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see a little red rectangular box with a white arrow in it. Just click on that arrow. That will open your control panel. In there, you'll see your chat pane. At the end of the session, we've got a Q&A session, and when you want to ask a question, that's also where you put your questions, in that chat pane. So just so I know that you know where your chat pane is, could you just type in hello and tell me where you're calling from today? Let's just see, who have we got? Where are you calling from? Just say hello and where are you? Thanks, Joshua. Texas, London. Karen. Hi, Karen. That's Karen Lane. And hi, Karen. And Chris Flack, Linda from Liverpool. And Tiffany from San Diego. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to just hand over to a welcome from our esteemed president of IORG, Nathan Zells. Thank you. Nathan, would you like to unmute yourself and welcome people?
All right. Is this better?
Fantastic. We can hear you.
Okay. So, I welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know us, our research group has been active since 2008. We are formally a non-profit cause organization. We're run by a volunteer steering committee and board of directors with the mission to reduce the information overload that devastates the productivity and quality of life of knowledge workers worldwide. You all know that. And we do this generally as a catalyst. We try to disseminate know-how to facilitate conversation and collaboration among people who are either victims or researchers or developers of solutions around information overload. And primarily our activities include maintaining our website, which you know, and our resource center, where we have all the information we can find about information overload, and having webinars and the occasional face-to-face conference. So I encourage everybody to engage with us. You can visit our site, you can join our mailing list, and we promise not to overload you through that. Or you can write me personally, just Google me, and see how you can help. And now let me present our Vice President of Research, Jonathan Spira, who will also be moderating today's event.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Mark. Mark, just to confirm, you see my screen? Mark?
Yeah, you need to just accept it, and then we'll see your screen.
Sorry, right. I just didn't get an accept thing. That's what. Oh, there we are. Yeah, great. Well, thank you, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone from across the globe to hopefully quarterly information overload discussion. We have a really good panel of speakers, and my role, in addition to hosting, is to be the first speaker. I'd like to start off by explaining my topic, which will be information overload in the headlines. And to that end, I'd like to give a little bit of background. Almost every generation has had access to more information than the one preceding it. It was maintained by some historians that Aristotle in his day knew just about everything that was to be known at the time, and the same has been said for other polymaths such as Francis Bacon and Thomas Young. I suspect today that would be near impossible. Indeed, more information has been produced in the past quarter century than in the past 5 centuries. Many pundits have said that a weekday paper edition of the New York Times contains more information than the average person in the 17th century would be exposed to in a lifetime. In other words, the amount of information and its impact is numbing. In my book Overload, I discussed what happens when you have too much information. Clearly, it's information overload. Information overload causes people to lose their ability to manage thoughts and ideas, contemplate, and even reason and think. I see this as Ted Koppel told his Nightline audience over 20 years ago, that we're becoming a nation of electronic voyeurs whose capacity and appetite for dialogue is a fading memory. I really wish I could ask Mr. Koppel what he thinks today. Perhaps I'll send him a note, and hopefully he won't be suffering from email overload and he'll answer it. But active engagement seemed to belong to an earlier generation. Today, as evidenced by recent elections in the United States, bursts of 140 characters in the form of individual tweets seem to have replaced more thoughtful means of communication for millions of people. Instead of in-depth analysis and thought, we are, for some reason, accepting brief, fleeting, ephemeral thoughts, many of which have little consequence, and even more have little impact. Put it this way, in the past decade, we've created billions of documents, pictures, videos, podcasts, blog posts, tweets, and more. If these remain unmanaged, we're sunk. Part of the reason this is because our view of how we manage things, management science of it all, and our view of the workforce has changed. We simply have to look at the type of jobs people do to understand where this is going, something quite nicely evidenced by this chart here. Also, again, because my remarks are somewhat introductory, I wanted to provide a definition for information overload for us to go forward with. Simply put, it describes an excess of information that results in the loss of ability to make decisions, process information, and prioritize tasks. So now on to the headlines. Sure, everyone here on this webinar is familiar with the topic of fake news. Fake news is cited as something that has influenced elections and influenced people's views on topics, informed people with misinformation. It's a problem that I see as an information overload related problem because we simply have too much information to be able to discern what's real and what's fake. I saw a brilliant cartoon the other day, two people standing next to a newsstand, both holding their smartphones, and one was saying to the other, you know, it's really tough to discern what's real news and what's fake. I wish there were an alternative. While the newsstand is practically bursting to open its gate and say, look here. It reminds me so much of the cartoon in the New Yorker magazine 25 years ago with the two dogs I'm sure you're all familiar with. Because of copyright issues, of course, I'm not cribbing those. But the two dogs in front of the desktop computer where one dog is saying to the other, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. So information overload is in the headlines because of fake news. Another area where it's in the headlines is because of apps. I know apps, it's a very generic term. Yes, there are applications on the smartphone in most cases, but how we use them, how we become so absorbed in whatever app it is that we lose sight of everything around us, including traffic and obstacles in the way, that in my book, in Overload, I cited the statistic that the incidence of admissions to emergency rooms had doubled every year in a 5-year period because of people walking into lampposts while texting. That's just one of many. Finally, just to make this really juicy and lascivious perhaps, Pew released a study on information overload just in the past week or so, where they claim that only 20% of the population is troubled or bothered by information overload. And they say that it's down from 27% at the last time they did the survey. They also, in their research, seem to feel that there's an economic split between people who are disadvantaged and people who have certain advantages in terms of how information overload impacts a person. My feeling continues to be, based on having spent 15 years researching this and engaging with thousands of knowledge workers whom we interviewed, observed over the shoulder, and surveyed, that information overload is one of the most democratic institutions out there. It's as democratic as a beer garden in Munich, where the Bürgermeister sits next to the garbage person, who sits next to the shopkeeper, who sits next to the housewife. There's no distinction in how information batters us. We're about to hear more, though, but I'll point out these causes as a drop more background. I won't read through the slides since that annoys me when I'm sitting in an event. And I'll also show you how things have increased. Just a slight increase in the past few years, as you can see. So I finally wanted to just close, not to push my book in front of you, but because the cover is something I personally designed after a huge fight with the publisher a few years ago. But if the tidal wave of information isn't made apparent by this image, I don't really know how better to express the problem of overload. With that, leave you with one last thought. This is what information overload causes. If you recognize yourself in several of these, you're not alone. That's my introduction, and Mark, I believe we're on to the next speaker.
Yeah, that's right. So the next speaker is Lawrence Mpofo. So, Lawrence.
Okay, great. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me okay, just before I start?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thanks.
Fabulous. Okay, well, thank you both for the introduction, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. So what I'm going to do today is to share with you some key findings that I found from the shifting world of information overload, and most importantly, how we overcome this. But first of all, by way of introduction, so this is me here. My name's Dr. Lawrence Ampofo, and in 2013, I founded Digital Mindfulness, the business Digital Mindfulness, and this was out of a need to help information workers and digital businesses really understand and take action to combat the negative impacts of constant connectivity and information overload. And in so doing this, it really became clear that as we understand how information overload works, that it really started to reveal a new phase of digital leadership and almost a new digital ecosystem. So with Digital Mindfulness, I've been really fortunate to work with some of the best and most knowledgeable people in the world on understanding our problem with managing information flows, particularly those that come into us on a daily basis. From media organizations like The Guardian and the BBC to Stanford University, I've taken the best minds from academia and from industry to understand how information overload manifests and also how we can become our best professional and personal selves. And it's really great. With Digital Mindfulness, I'm really proud to say that we get downloads in over 100 countries a month based on this topic. And so it's really fascinating that this is now becoming a global conversation. And we also have an online community as well of digital professionals that are really conscious now about the quality of their digital lives. So what am I going to cover today? Well, I've got 15 minutes here with you today, just a little bit less now. And what I really want to focus on sharing with you are key insights that I've learned in my past 3 years with Digital Mindfulness in terms of overcoming information overload. And the first main point that I'm going to share with you today is that to overcome information overload, we need to be digitally mindful. The second thing that we need is digital literacy. And the third thing is that we need to be able to design for attention and humanity. Now, I'm sure everybody here knows the main problem with information overload. And in fact, is the point kind of moot, really. The problem is implied in the name. Nobody wants to be overloaded with information, but we still struggle with this phenomenon on a personal and most definitely on a professional basis. Most of the content that we see related to information overload relates to the amount of data that we produce every day, almost like data is a thing. Yes, we produce every day approximately 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, which is an extraordinary figure by any standard. But as I've been studying, what's more fascinating to me are the human and business costs of information overload. And it's only really when we start to understand this term information overload in terms of the human and the business costs that we really start to have a sense of the gravity of the problem that we're dealing with. For example, the UK government recently produced in a report that productivity levels nationwide are decreasing, and that one of the causes of this level of decrease is information overload. Looking at US statistics as well, there are also real consequences to this, and in the US, a financial figure has been put to this in terms of to the tune of $1 trillion almost, in terms of lost productivity to information overload. So sometimes we're prone to think that the problem with information overload is actually the information itself. Perhaps if there wasn't so much data out there, then we'd be better at managing it. Or perhaps if there was a better app, then we'd be better at managing this information influx. But I think one of the things that's become clear to me is that the main barrier to solving information overload is really our app-based or screen-based thinking. As engineers and as designers, thinking that there's an app-based fix fix, for our information overload problems is counterproductive, and it costs companies a lot in terms of the satisfaction and productivity of its users, and also in terms of the way the company is perceived by its audience. The appification of our lives really can reach absurd levels. For example, if you want to get fit, there's an app for that. If you want to learn how to cook, there's an app for that. If you want to know how attractive you are, there's an app for that. Are you lost? There's an app for that. Dead or dying? There's an app for that. Have a heart attack? There's an app for that. For me, the real problem is that we're caught in a cycle of thinking that the main solution to information overload is to create more information. To get past this screen-based, app-based thinking, we need to overcome, I think, our failure of the imagination in the way that we create solutions to this information overload. And as was mentioned previously in the introduction, one of the main consequences of information overload is this whole idea of fake news. And this is a terrifying prospect, because there's so much information available now for people that people genuinely don't know what's true and what's not. Having spoken to someone who's very senior in politics recently, he was saying to me that people genuinely occupy different informational universes and appear not to care at all about what is true online and what's not. And this has enormous consequences for making decisions that have real-world consequences, such as political elections or career progression, or indeed what ideologies we choose to align ourselves with or not. Another example of this very quickly from the political sphere is the whole idea of the online presence and the online strategy of the terrorist group ISIS. And one of their strategies in particular is to overwhelm social networks, particularly Twitter, with more information than the network can handle and its user base can handle, so that it starts to hijack people's attention spans and their cognitive maps, as it were, so that they rise to the top of people's attention. So this really is a problem. So what's the solution to this? Well, as I mentioned before, I said I'm going to leave you with these 3 different takeaways, which are digital mindfulness, digital literacy, and designing for attention and humanity. Now, digital mindfulness is the idea of learning to live consciously in the present digital moment, to become more mindful, focused, productive, and intentional with our digital world. If we're aware of our present digital moment, then we can ask ourselves really pertinent questions about the way that we interact with our digital tools and services every day, such as, do I really need my email open right now? If my email is open, am I aware of the effect that the notifications buzzing every so often are going to have on my attention? Do I need to be in this Slack chat right now? Do I need these other distractions around me? Being digitally mindful has its roots in philosophy, in a philosophy of mindfulness, meditation, which is the whole idea of essentially being aware of our present moment without prejudice. However, being digitally mindful also means being judicious with how we use digital, understanding the effect that digital has on our bodies, on our minds, and on our relationships, and designing our behaviors around those effects. Some people think that being digitally mindful relates to going on digital detoxes, such as disconnecting completely from the internet, and this isn't entirely the case. Recent studies have shown, for example, that digitally detoxing can have the negative effects on people. It can have the opposite effects insofar as it can raise stress levels. It can raise people's anxiety because some people are waiting for communications to come in. They're anticipating something negative that might happen when they reconnect. A better example of digital mindfulness is seen in You've seen in people who have all of their most important apps on the home screen of their phone, for example. So on the very first page, once they've opened their phone up, all of their most important apps are right there ready for them to use. They don't have to spend time scrolling through the phone and potentially getting hijacked or tempted into using one of their favorite social networks or whatever. One organization that helps with this kind of thing, so one organisation that helps with this is the management consultancy, such as PricewaterhouseCoopers, and what they've defined is this whole idea of mind flows, building digital tools around their workers' mind flows, and so that's by understanding people's mind flows, which are basically the peak times when their employees are able to engage with certain tasks, for example, cognitively demanding work or creative work or collaborative work. Once you understand that, and that of course means that you need to have enough data on the particular employee to be able to provide them with the right solution, then you can provide them with the right tools to help them when they're in the right frame of mind to complete a task. However, in order to do this, we do need to collect more data. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of the irony of that, in order to apply them judiciously. And this is why designing for attention and humanity is so important. By designing digital ecosystems in a way that empowers people to make really conscious decisions on the way that they spend their time, such as making it easy for people to disconnect, or designing apps or tools that improve our online and our off-screen lives. These will be absolutely crucial going forward. Of course, it's really, really difficult to engage seriously with this kind of discussion because most business models for technology companies rely on the amount of clicks that they can generate, the amount of minutes that people spend in a particular application, the amount of eyeballs that they can gather. However, changing business models is something that we're really going to have to explore seriously to verge away from making money from shattering people's attention spans by serving them more and more information that may or may not be true, but by helping them to do helping connecting people more to their humanity and more of what people think is essential. Finally, digital literacy is the third and final part of the ways that I think that we can overcome information overload. Now, digital literacy might sound like a lazy and an unsexy topic, but becoming digitally literate is becoming a key skill for everybody in the workplace, from the leadership right the way through to entry level. And don't think that digital literacy is automatically endowed to the younger generation. Just because young people are technically proficient doesn't mean that they have the cognitive skills to navigate information overload in the workplace or in their personal lives. The European Information Society defines digital literacy, as you can see on this slide here. Now, this is a clumsy definition of of digital literacy, but it is comprehensive and it is useful, and it does touch on a few really important points. And these are definitely things that people in the workplace are going to have to be able to master. But with regards to this definition here, I think we can encompass the core skills of digital literacy into the following points. So to be digitally literate now, we need technical skills. We need to understand how to build digital artifacts online, and we need to understand the technical architecture of the digital world. To be digitally literate, we need critical skills to critically interpret what is available, the information that's available online, to be able to decipher what's fake and what's true, for example. We need creative skills. To understand how to be creative digitally will be essential in the near future. interpersonal skills. Cultivating the skills to maintain productive interpersonal skills digitally and then use them productively, again, will be essential.
I need to just jump in and give a 2-minute warning on this.
Ah, okay, no problem. I'm on time, thanks. Finally, cognitive skills. So cultivating and maintaining the mental skills we require to complete the tasks, that we need to do through our digital tools, again, is going to be really, really important. So again, by becoming digitally mindful, by designing our apps and our digital ecosystem for our attention and our humanity, and also by becoming digitally literate, I think that we stand a very good chance of overcoming the problems that we've been talking about related to information overload. And thank you all very much.
Thank you very much as well. Thank you for citing my billion-dollar cost of information overload figure. I'm just adding the attribution by saying that. And Mark, I think we're on to the next speaker.
Yeah, that's right. Next speaker is Emmanuel.
Yes, hello, it's me here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Go ahead, please.
Let me just share my screen. Can you hear myself on the screen?
We can hear you. We can see your screen, yeah.
You can see the prezi? Okay. So, thank you for inviting me first. I am glad to be here, and also thank you, Lawrence. It was mind-blowing, actually. I think that basically what you wrote there is part of the digital literacy. Is also part of my story, and that's actually why I'm here to share this. So to present myself, I'm working for about 8 years in a corporate in IBM. So I'm here to present my experience. So I'm not a researcher or somebody that is really dedicating particular time in the theory part, but I'm more trying to focus on the practice of everyday working. And as you probably maybe know what it means to work in a corporate, you have many different tasks every day, many different people and sources from various. Even if you are just a financial analyst, you get in touch with maybe all the different kind of function of the company, right? So, and my experience here is also considering since I started, and you can see on the background there is actually a pizza. So I'm coming also from Italy, and I'm currently working in Bratislava. And the pizza I put there because I think that is actually connected with information overload. Like, a very good pizza, it has to be simple. And if you put too many ingredients on it, it actually becomes, you are not even able to distinguish the real taste of it. And the same when you have too much information, too many information in your inbox or in all the additional notification or tools you're having, it gets so crowded that you are not able to pay attention enough on your work or what you have to do. So, and this is what, when starting from it, I would like to share that, the tool in this case is never the problem. So it's not emails as such or what also Lawrence said, all the variety of new application we are using. They're not a problem as such, but mostly is how our brain works with them. So you can also have only one tool. For example, consider your inbox and email, and you can use one tool for everything, and still you can have a lot of troubles when particularly email is basically one of the main causes of information overload, right? So in between, there is the more tools, the more possibility to use them badly. One tool, you use badly that one because everything is there. So in the balance in between, where you actually find the right reply for that, right? So unfortunately, and I would say that now I start here as well, where I am, this kind of, at the end of the sentence, there is unfortunate. And unfortunately, email is still the number one. So many people are recognizing it, are recognizing the fact that email is the number one tool for communication, even if we have many devices, but mostly in an office environment, in a corporate, but also in little offices. I can hear with when I discuss with my friends, with colleagues in the company where I work for, and other people that I meet all around the world. You can hear also in the TV or in the TV movies, everywhere there is email as something that is part of the normal communication system, right? And together with that, there is the bad practice guy. And there are many of these bad practice guys in our inboxes. For example, you know, how you use it for communicating, it's a way, but everybody has its own interpretation of it. So I started a love story with email some time ago. It was 2009, because before I was a student. And as a student, email as such is not really a problem. You have it, you use it, but you don't have more than a couple of emails maybe every week. You start meeting it when you are in the university, and now actually teenagers nowadays, they don't really even have email anymore, or just have it for having the account on Facebook or on their social network, but as such they don't actually use it so much. I started really the love story when I started working in the office, where email was the main tool of communication. And we know that bad practice are the cause of information overload. So for example, I don't know, the high priority. How many times email is considered as a tool for immediate execution? You receive an high priority email in your inbox, and you are expected to answer almost immediately. Actually, at the same time, if you have a corporate chat, some colleagues are actually contacting you in the corporate chat, notifying you that they sent you an urgent email. So at this point, why don't you just pick up the phone? So this is also part of digital mindfulness, I would say, and literacy, to understand how to deal with that in a better way. Email are causing frustration. So because this is due to interpretation, is due to the fact that I remember that it didn't, when I started working, it didn't feel right to me that I had to feel emotionally involved in certain kind of communication. It's something that you start, having emotional reaction towards your colleagues that are actually just working in the same company as yours, and they are all working for the same positive outcome and goal, that is, the good health of your corporation. So why is it that? That was one of the questions I was having. Time waste and long reply, right? So you waste a lot of time in replying long information, while nowadays, if you are leaving the office and you have your WhatsApp group conversation, or you're using Facebook message to discuss, in this case, you easily reply much quickly without all the formal information you would put in an email. So you still spend more time in an email. And where is the collaboration? So all this, and there are also more discussions and more thought I put here, but mostly these were the main reason that brought me to an experience that was a no email experience. I put here on top, there is Luis Suarez, that was an IBMer at that time, and that was someone who actually put the idea in my mind as well. So I learned that somebody in my same corporation was not using email, and nowadays there are many in the no email environment, let's say, right? So that they are trying to follow the same kind of example, mostly considering the fact that there are so many best practices that if we just remove the inbox as main source of our communication, there should be something else that we need to learn, we need to use in a better way, focus on it, and then learn to use it in a better way. So that's generally the idea. So the first thing I did was to agree that I would not use email anymore for communicating. So I set up an out-of-office message saying that whoever was sending me a message would receive an automated out-of-office, where I was basically sharing the idea that I'm not really reading emails except for one or a couple of times during the day, but if you really need me, there are other 20 options to get in touch with me. such as external social networks in more mobile, corporate chat. In IBM, there is an enterprise social network, but I guess in many other corporate there are older enterprise social network where you can still discuss on the profile, on discussing the community or in a group and so on. It took me about a month, I would say. So it was July at the time. It was July 2013. It took a month to start communicating, and I started receiving some, the first emails in my inbox and nothing went out from there. And so I was considering at the beginning a story where I would announce to whoever was in my peers or direct peers, management, customers, and so on, that was my choice, and try to share a better way to communicate together. So I started the practice as working out loud. So on the enterprise social network, mostly I mostly communicated internally, nothing externally, because at that time I had a role as a finance consolidator, so I wasn't exactly having any customer outside the company. So my out of office was on IBM Connection and was mostly sharing what I was doing during the day. Every single day, for 5 minutes, I was taking my agenda, having an idea what was my agenda, and then writing what I was doing, who I was meeting, and in case I was meeting somebody in particular, I was mentioning that, I don't know, in Facebook or in Twitter or on LinkedIn, you can mention a specific person. I was mentioning this particular 1 or 2 or 3 of the colleagues to make sure that I counted on this particular meeting, so that everybody of my peers, my management, and everybody that needed me, they could learn where I was. I started using a time management practice. In this case, it's the Pomodoro technique, dividing my day in slots of 25 minutes. So every single 25 minutes by 25 minutes was allocated to a certain task. So in order to help me to focus, I was giving focus time and non-focus time as well, and keep improving every time, and sharing with everybody what I was doing. So if you were sending me a mail and you were getting my out of office, and maybe you didn't consider the out of office as something serious, I was still monitoring my inbox a couple of times a day, and then reading your mail and replying to you, trying to find you in any other source possible, through a phone, through chat, through Facebook, through wherever I could have a touch with you, and explaining you what was my choice about and what was the reason behind. So I had also an opportunity to start a kind of networking. So no email as such was a kind of positive option for me to have a bigger network. And experimentation. So this draconian, let's say, choice to revolutionize the communication system helped me to learn how to use many more tools, particularly the enterprise social network that at that time was not yet so much developed within the company, in terms of not everybody was effectively using it. So the need to share the best practice, the need to learn was also something for me to make sure that I could communicate with more people, because if I was just in a for example, in the enterprise social network alone, I wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone. So I needed more colleagues to learn to use these tools, to learn to avoid information overload in the inbox, and to try to work on a different environment, an open environment where everything could be shared openly, everything could be, the interest could be a choice of the individual, and not like in the inbox where whatever you have in the inbox is the choice of who sent you the message. That is a totally different perspective. So
I need to jump in with a 2-minute warning, please.
Yeah, sorry. So in this case, I started a kind of story that was called Dr. Connection. So Dr. Connection is a video. So I started doing some videos, 2 years ago, from a brainstorming, and these videos were actually the story in the story. So story in the story means that I started putting on in IBM Connection a blog post where twice a month I was posting videos showing how to do it. So there were videos from how to use IBM Connection, through how to use email, to how to communicate in a better way, to what is the social behavior you should adopt, how to use other tools. And so in this case, I could share best practice and show how this best practice could be shared by using social tools. So there is a takeaway from me about this, about 3 years of no email. So far it's 3 years. So the behavioral change as such is needed. So it's not only learning how to use the tools, but it's a behavior of willing to share. And every time you have a message to share, you should think, what is the best channel for it? What is the channel that maximizes the message that you share? Once you start, you will never go back. And also focusing on no emails as such helps you in improving generally your communication skills. And videos and blogs, particularly video tutorials, are a very great way to prevent the overload. So currently, for example, in those Doctor Connection episodes that is just internally shared, I can share you 2 episodes that are just shared externally. I have more than 40 episodes in a couple of years, more than 35,000 downloads. It's globally recognized in the whole corporate. I became a trusted source, so many colleagues are coming to me asking for information and questions about how to use the social tools and so on. I'm a speaker in various team and events, and people are actually sharing the content, so I don't have to create the content again about a specific topic or explain how to use certain tool. Everything is there, so there is a big repository of shareable topics that I have ready-made for you to see and watch and learn. And currently, I started also a live show that is something like a live podcast, and that still has an opportunity not only to review videos that are long, about 10 to 15 minutes, but also to attend live a show. The show actually are suggested and created by me, but suggested by the whole community. And that's actually my story and my example, how I was fighting against information overload.
Bravo. Thank you very much. And I believe we now are going to the question and answer part of the show. It's my favorite part of the show. Let's see how we're doing on the questions. You can input your questions just as we did in the text box. I have one already for Lily. Or do you prefer Manuel or Emanuele?
Lily is fine.
Lily, okay. Awesome. By the way, what part of Italy are you from?
I'm from the northeast, like some city called Udine. That is not so far from Venice. Everybody knows Venice, so.
Yeah, va bene. Okay, very nice. So I'm wondering if this is the question. I'm wondering if there was any resistance to Lele not doing email from upper management. That's the question. Upper management and email.
Yeah. So there was not at the beginning. I made sure that there was nothing written about you have to use email to communicate. So when a manager or somebody, there was sometimes some complaint, particularly during any complex time. For example, finance closing. I was a finance manager for a while, so I was dealing with a lot of this. And somebody was coming to me with kind of, how come you're not using emails? But my reply was always open reply to share, I'm happy you're asking me because I can show you that nowhere is written. It's important that the message is passed to you. And I always proved after 3 years that you could always get my message, even not through your email. And that was my force.
Sounds like a reasonable response. It seems to me, from a personal standpoint, that all you did was adopt a very healthy attitude towards email, and just keep it at a manageable level so that you weren't constantly being dragged back into the muck, as they say. Anyway, we have a question for Lawrence now. Do you need to take different approaches to teach digital mindfulness based on the age or generation of the user?
That is a good question. I think it's less a generational question and more of an ability question is what we found in terms of teaching digital mindfulness. And so we've worked a lot with university students in terms of managing their information overload and their information inputs. And the approach we've taken with students has been very different to the kind of approach that we've taken with corporate clients, and even then that's quite different. For example, with management consultancies who, they tend to work on a project by project basis. That was quite interesting in terms of understanding how and getting the employees to not have digital tools blend their work and personal life. We found that the office and the home just became one big thing, and it was very difficult for corporate people in particular to separate the two, to place in useful boundaries. With students, we found that the thing we were working on the most was this whole idea of intentionality, right? In terms of intentionally connecting to the services that you wanted to, intentionally engaging with the products or services that they really wanted to, and not being taken off, because a lot of the work that students were doing was very cerebral, right, very sedentary. So they wanted to focus much more on, I think, the efficacy, right, in terms of getting that intellectual work done. So this very much is a work in progress, and but the findings that we're getting from this are going to have real world impact, I think.
Great, thank you. This is for both of my colleagues on the panel. If you could offer the audience, and this is my question, if you could offer our listening audience one bit of advice each, what would each of you say? I'll ask Lele to go first, and then Lawrence, please.
One little advice is always to give it a try. So always think before you have to pass your message. So consider the message as something that doesn't have a shape, but it's just an information point, and then give it a try to the best information channel you have in that moment, and try more. Because just by experimenting, you find a better way. Thank you.
And Lawrence?
I think, so I recently had a discussion with some of the people at Google about this, about, what's the one thing you would tell me about, and all of us came up with the solution, and it was fascinating that before we connect with any digital artifacts, whether it be a digital device or whether it be an online service or whatever, there's always a moment in which there's always a space right before when we make the decision, I'm going to go, I'm going to open Facebook, or I'm going to open Pinterest or whatever. And my one piece of advice, I guess, would be if you can be more intentional about the way you connect, the results will be outstanding. So before, does your email really need to be open, particularly considering the transaction cost in terms of attention that it costs you, right, from the main task you're meant to be doing? Or, even if you are in email, right, do you need your calendar open? Do you need the buzzing, the notifications that are going to come in? I think if you can learn to be more intentional about the way you connect, then some of the problems that we've been speaking about here with information overload might lessen for you.
Thank you. I have one question here now, and we have time for one more if somebody wants to add something to the not very overloaded question box at the moment. But this is a very practical matter. Given that email has effectively replaced more formal letters as a tool used in legal and HR departments, what other digital tools could be used within the enterprise to have a written record so that whatever is being said is discoverable?
It's for me?
Either one.
For me, I would say that email is much more and much less discoverable than any other, for example, enterprise social network. Or you think about Slack, think about IBM Connection, about Jive, and so on. About Facebook, I consider Facebook or LinkedIn, and everybody knows. So Facebook is never gonna shut down. While email, when you are employee, the first thing they give you is the email, but the first thing they delete when you leave the corporate is your email still. So all your years of work are getting totally deleted at one point. So you cannot search anymore. And I bet anybody that knows some colleague that left the company where they're working, if anybody ever went into that archive email that this colleague left somewhere locked in a, in a locker or somewhere else. So everywhere is much more searchable. Slack is a good tool. IBM Connection is a good tool, and many are.
I will throw out, though, that I don't think Facebook is forever. I think in the 1960s, people thought RCA mainframes were forever. Or in the 70s, people thought a DEC VAX was forever. Everything has a 15. I'm a historian by training. All of my degrees are in history. We won't get into religious freedom in the Habsburg hereditary lands, which was my dissertation, but everything comes in a cycle. And the tech industry seems to have a 15-year cycle. So I don't believe anything is forever, but I will point out as a counter to what you said, a corporation owns email and has far more control over email than anything else. I would say that any company that is replacing a means of formal communication with employees needs to give extremely careful thought to that. It's not something you can do casually. Lawrence, did you want to touch on that one, or?
No, I think you're absolutely right. The in terms of organisations owning email, and I think one of the things actually I was going to mention previously is that in addition to intentionally connecting, it's really good to have an idea of the apps that are almost like ethically built, that are built in such a way as to minimize that information overload or that respect for your attention. So I know that one of the things I personally use now that I've been doing this research is I use Apple Mail a lot, and I know one of the reasons that I use it is that it's just email. It doesn't have a calendar on there. It doesn't have any other bells and whistles on there. It's just email, and I switch it on when I need it, switch it off, and I kind of tend to bundle my time with it. There are only kind of 3 points in the day in which I put email on. But this is an interesting discussion because I found that there's, and I'm sure everyone in the audience has experienced this, but there's a growing backlash to these alternative systems like Slack, for example. There's a growing Slack pushback, if you like. There are sites popping up all over the web about this, and people saying that Slack really hijacks people's attention. They find it really difficult to concentrate, and they find that it's just another channel, another information channel that they have to deal with. So by minimizing my email, having almost like a minimal email provider, that's what I found is the best solution for me.
Yeah, I'll throw out something then. I'll address the last question because we have to. I think people don't realize how fleeting any tools are, and it's kind of risky to. One of the first things that came out of our research at Basics was the one environment rule, which basically, very simply put, says the more you make an individual knowledge worker go outside one overall overarching environment to do something, the greater the likelihood is they'll never come back. So I'm greatly oversimplifying in the interest of time and space, but that's it. One environment rule. Question for Nathan and Jonathan. Do you think that human/technology interfaces and artificial intelligence hold the promise for the creation of truly new and smart technologies that may completely revolutionize communication to new levels? First, I'll just chime in and then go to Nathan. I'm frightened of the language in the question because anything that people proclaim to revolutionize something or to be the next big thing is typically not. But I believe that we go along with iterative improvements until something we didn't really suspect will take hold. We don't see it coming, just like email, for example, and then all of a sudden it's the standard. Nathan, do you have a final comment for that?
Well, I would take a longer view of this. Obviously, artificial intelligence, whatever meaning we give to this word, is going to be part of the computing of, say, 20 years from now. And obviously, the email system we use today is going to be completely forgotten and unrecognizable by then. And I'm certain that what we call AI today will play a part. But how it will all happen is way beyond what I can foresee at the moment.
I'll just remind people in closing that the very nature of technology has meant that the digital photographs that were taken by NASA spacecraft not that long ago are no longer readable by any technology that NASA has. We've lost extremely valuable information that we spent billions of dollars sending spacecraft and astronauts out to space. And I will further point out that had we used analog cameras, not digital, we would still have access to that information. With that, I wish to thank everyone, thank our panelists, thank our guests in the audience. There are parting gifts. Please see the hostess on the way out. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you will all, if you're not on the IORG mailing list, please do sign up. If you are, please consider how you can participate more with IORG. We welcome your contributions, and we look forward to seeing you at the next online or face-to-face event. Thank you. Good day.